The way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move?
Can I say something? I'm the type of person, if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you that I don't know.
Welcome to the Unconventional Founder Podcast, where we uncover the mindsets, practices, and strategies used by successful non-technical founders. Our mission for this podcast is to empower you with the information you need, help you get as far as you can. That said, let's get into it. All right, we are at Mindset Health, speaking with the two founders of Mindset Health. Welcome, Alex and Chris.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I've known you both for, I think, 7 years.
Well, it depends when you class it, because we technically met on the Facebook group when we had no idea, and I don't know, something happened then. I can't remember what happened, but I don't think we really knew each other until later on.
That's right. I think I saw you in the news and I reached out to you on Facebook and I was like, oh, this looks super interesting.
Yeah.
In the same area that I was in. And yeah, it's been amazing to see your journey from just you guys going at it to going through YC, and you've raised a bunch of money. How many users?
Over 150,000 paying members that have gone on and used the programs.
Amazing. 150,000 people who their lives have been changed. It's incredible. In that, if anyone has any experience with healthcare apps knows that it's so hard. So you guys have done amazing. I guess what I'm super interested to talk to you guys about is your mindset and your journey early on. You're co-founders, but you're also brothers, and you're also pretty competitive from my interactions with you. Yeah, tell us about when you got started. And you're an accountant originally.
Yeah.
Alex, and Chris,
I was studying finance.
You were studying finance,
Yep.
Maybe some psych as well?
Yeah, a little bit of psych.
Yeah. Really, not really computer science at all. How did you get started, and what were you thinking when you first got started? Talk us through those early days.
I think if you look even before with the start, the journey before we started was influenced really by our dad and mum to an extent as well. It was just, he started a company, he started several companies, listed them. So we've just grown up with that exposure, entrepreneurial, start your own company. He was studied math and then computer science, and that was just a known, that's probably one of the biggest advantages we had, was it's a known pathway. And so always since I was young, wanted to be a businessman was probably how I would have coined it at the start. But that was such an influential thing of knowing this was possible, learning from dad, learning from his experiences and strategy. And I think that really informed us.
I think one aspect, especially touching on mum as well, was mum and her family they were farmers up in the Mallee area. And if anyone knows farmers, it's the most binary, good season, bad season, ups and downs. A great season's amazing, a bad season's horrible. And I think you just ride that wave. And something she brought to the table was just we'll figure it out, positive mindset towards everything as well.
Love that. So important when you're starting a business.
Yeah.
Because things don't go according to plan.
Which has happened a lot to us all the time.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think maybe coming back to the original question around mindset. So we had previously done, actually a funny story regarding wanting to start something and build something is Alex and I would jump through a bunch of different ideas. We originally started when we were 15 and 17, and we created some of the first Google Play apps for iPad. So the iPad had just come out, and we saw an opportunity where the sort of Facebook iPhone app or the mobile app would scale for iPad, and it would look horrible. And so there was no people that had built around that UX before. And so what we did is we created Google Play apps that would just open up the web view. So literally just the website of the Facebook app, and called it Facebook for iPads, and ended up getting a few thousand downloads each per page. And it was just a good example of seeing an opportunity and just deciding to start it and deciding to solve it. We did something else with barbecue.
We did get banned for copyright. So
yeah.
We got kicked off because we weren't employed by Facebook or eBay or anything like that.
We saw another one, which actually came from our uncle as well, around barbecue paper. So this idea that cleaning the barbecue after every use is annoying, but if you use baking paper, you can cook just as well and not have the mess. You can just throw it out. But I think it was our second experiment with that. It caught a fire and lit the whole barbecue up. So it was probably a good example of it not going well. But all these ideas led us to try to find what we dedicate to actual startups.
That's awesome. And so tell me about the app that you built, because I remember you've got this idea. How do you go from, you got 1,000 downloads? What are the early stages of that?
So even before, yeah, like you've got the idea. So we had our first real startup idea was Covet, which was a dress rental app. So we're both in university. We come with this idea. Women have these clothes. How do we help them like share it? So if they don't want to sell it because they're attached, but they don't want to wear it again because of outfit repeating. And so like we had this idea of Airbnb for women's clothes where you can rent it. And that's a great idea for two brothers to build for women's clothes. But we're like, okay, how do we, like, the logical things, like you want an app. So how do you get an app? Well, you have to build an app. So how do you build an app? You learn how to code. Okay, let's learn how to code. And we knew, like, we were starting to read into literature from like Y Combinator and other places around like how important it is to be technical and how important it is. And there's two non-technical founders at the time. We identified like, that's just how you would do that. And you can't really, we don't have the money to pay for anyone else. And the other thing is like, tech companies need tech founders. That was the like prevailing wisdom at the time. And we just bought a very old MacBook Pro and did a $15 online Udemy course of like how to learn Swift. And then we would take turns of like building in the morning, and then I'll give it to laptop to Chris. He would learn how to like code, and then like we'll just back and forth. Over time, we stopped doing that and started building our app itself. So like over, I think, I don't know, 3 to 6 months we built it before we actually got something to market. But I think the question around like how do you get the first 1,000 users, like we didn't know that. We didn't speak to any users. We did so many bad things that we can dive on deeper, but we launched it and no one used it.
Unreal.
I think when transitioning to, we'd been working on that for about 9 months, I think. And one of our mentors, Kish, asked us, do you want to work on this problem for the next 10 years of your life? And that puts things in perspective of no, it's not the problem that we care about, not what we're connected to, not what we're excited about. And so we killed it the next day and found the area of the mind and behavioral psychology and utilizing it specifically for like common life situations as well as like healthcare conditions was really like impactful to us. And eventually came across hypnosis and the research behind it and saw a really interesting opportunity to bridge the gap between the research world and the mainstream market, which saw hypnosis as another woo science rather than a sort of medically relevant technique. And so we saw that sort of original gap, and now we've got our tech skills that we've been able to develop over time. And we learnt a lot, which was don't sit in your room for 3 to 6 months building a product that you have no idea if people are going to enjoy or use or anything like that. So I think we launched the first version, which is actually called Better Mind. And we launched that in about 2 weeks to get first just instant access and get people trying it out and seeing what's working or not.
Yeah, the first app took 6 months. The second app took 2 weeks.
That's amazing. And in those 6 months where you were learning, how was that? Were there challenges along the way, or did you get stuck?
I think honestly, it was fun. Like you're building this Instagram app, you're building these things, you're coding, it's just like you're just building stuff. It was really fun, and like it didn't feel that hard. Like I think there's this thing around, you persevere and you push through and you like just do it, and that side. I think maybe because we were young or maybe whatever, like we're just naive and we're just like, yeah, you just do it, and like you just learn, and like we just didn't realize how hard it was going to be, and like so it didn't feel that hard. You just do the things you needed to do. And I think because we were obviously brothers, but we were doing it together, learning together, like we would switch around, swap problems. We're both learning to code. You just have this back and forth, and you have this partner that can be there and bounce ideas off and grow with you. And that I think has kept going over the past 5 years as we built the company together.
I think we also invested into what we thought would be fun to build a startup. Is we had our little basement section. We had a table tennis table that we worked on. We had big whiteboards where we do creative sessions and think about what's going to be the vision of the world and how we're going to change it. Like we'd had that all throughout. So then when you're trying to solve these hard problems and learn how to a completely new skill, it's okay, that's just what we have to do to get to whatever vision we're going towards. It didn't feel like, oh, there's this thing, I'll never be able to do it. It was never that. It was just, got to do it.
It was somewhat play acting startup as well, right?
Yeah.
We were deliberately doing an all-nighter for no reason, just because of the vibe, just for the vibe of that. We would watch Shark Tank at lunch because the vibe.
No fake startup company doesn't have a ping pong table.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have it.
We've got one here. We've never used it.
So I think part of it, we just love the space. We were this fit within that, and we knew it was approachable. We knew we could do it. It's solvable. Making apps, it's not that hard if you do it. I'm sure there are definitely software that is very hard to make. Just the ones we were making weren't that.
Yeah, so interesting. I think a lot of people, when they see the problem ahead, it seems very overwhelming. But because if I'm hearing correctly, you guys had an approach where you're like, let's have some fun, let's play, let's just get into it. And I think also with you both being there to support each other and bounce back, and two atoms come together, that seems like such an important thing.
we still play that role now.
Yeah.
Like if one of us is noticeably feeling stressed or down or something like that, the other person has to step up and play that role. And I don't know, even towards the end of last week, I was coming off a bit of a sickness and I wasn't feeling my best and I wasn't having the same sort of energy and optimism as you normally would have. But I was coming with energy and optimism, and then it's like, okay, I'm back now. And so we just play that role for each other when needed.
Pivoted from the dressmaking app into the
Hypnosis app.
general hypnosis app.
Headspace for hypnosis.
Headspace for hypnosis, not called Mindset yet. And then you launched that, you got a bunch of traction.
We got some traction.
Got some
I think,
traction.
but like the difference was some traction for Better Minded or View of Mindset or whenever, like we rebuilt it after that 2 weeks to make it like, took a couple more months to make the first good version. But we got $200 in the first month. For us, it was like, holy shit, like this is, I don't know if I can swear, but holy, this is amazing. But
20,
we did it and we
people
got
paying
nothing.
for us, and we were like, wow, people are actually paying for our
We had
products.
told mum and like 20 real humans paying. Like I think you can celebrate this little. That's a lot of people, and they're willing to pay for our product and enjoying it. We're like, wow. And then the next month it was 400, and then 500, I think. And then the next month it was like growing. And it was like that was exciting, and that was different. It wasn't like gangbusters, but it was enough.
I think we also just pulled those users in. Like
Yeah.
we were in every Reddit forum around like things, whether it was like self-esteem or self-improvement or mental health. Like we were in all those Reddit forums, we were in the Facebook groups posting about it, asking people for feedback, just telling our sort of story a bit. Even when we launched, which we'll get to, we launched our sort of next app, which again we built at the start of when we were in Y Combinator. We built in 2 weeks again and launched that first version. Again, we went back to our roots and pulled users in. We were in every IBS Facebook group. We were in every thing posting about it as a product. It wasn't like we'd go straight to not thinking we should do that.
I think that's the do things that don't scale like thing, which we haven't really touched on, but throughout this whole time, we were devouring Y Combinator content and like devouring and obsessing and watching, like they've got like 20 lectures from literally the best people in the world. That was instead of going to university and doing our real, because we were students at the time, we didn't do those, but we were watching hour-long lectures of metrics and go-to-market strategies and Y Combinator. And so we ramped up our knowledge of startups and like how to make a good startup from early age.
Having that mentoring and guidance to inspire you to keep trying stuff.
Yeah, and this mentoring from like YouTube videos, but because this was like still years before we got in, but just like it always surprises me now, like meeting early stage founders and they haven't gone through that content. It's a bit, I'm sure there's other good content, but this is the best. Do the best. Don't do the baseline. There's no excuse to not do that content.
Yeah, 100%. Before I moved to San Francisco, I would watch Elon Musk and Steve Jobs videos on YouTube,
Nice.
like obsessively.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And then you've launched that, you've got real paying, amazing, you've started to get money, like some rando on the internet is giving you money. Like, holy crap. What happens after that? How do you start doing more of that?
Luck. This is the interesting thing. You can't predict this. And I don't know where we would be if we applied for StartMate and we didn't get in. So StartMate's an accelerator program like YC for Australia. And we didn't get in for the first time. And then luck happened. Someone in the UK App Store featured Mindset as app of the day. For no reason, we never heard of them. They never spoke to us. It was a new app. I don't know why they liked it, but they did. And so that was 3 months in maybe or something like that. And then we got 10,000 downloads in a day. Versus up until that point, we've had a few hundred. And we thought we were getting hacked. And we were like panicked and
I was in a
refreshing
university
everything.
lecture, sitting next to actually one of our now employees with like the graph going up and me just shitting myself.
But that was like, you can't do, that's lucky. If it didn't happen, we would have figured it out. But what that gave us was all of this growth, revenue growth that we could leverage to get into StartMate on our next application. So then we were able to, obviously we were doing some ads at that point. We were starting to get a go-to-market that we could repeat, but that definitely boosted that and made the graph look a lot better, which then we were able to leverage with our like more deeper understanding of our users and things like that to get into StartMate, which for us was a massive milestone because I was an accountant working full-time while doing this. Chris was still a student studying at this point. StartMate's 75 grand meant I quit my job after 4 months. That was my full-time job. And then Chris dropped out of uni and meant we could go full-time.
Huge. And I like something you said before, we would have figured it out. That mindset of, because I think there's obviously luck, that is luck, but there's also, you make chances for luck.
Yeah. I think there's a good quote from StartMate, which is like, increase the surface area for luck to hit. Like, you can't guarantee it, but if you do more things, you ship faster, you do other things, more likely that something, this is a great example. If we hadn't built that app so quickly versus our other app, that wouldn't have happened, right?
We also, as fast as we could, learn what good mobile design looks like And then we created an app that was pretty damn good for what it was, the amount of time we'd spent on it. And again, if we didn't do that, they wouldn't have featured us. And yeah, that increased the surface area. From the other thing around that we'll figure it out is we say that a lot. We'll figure it out. Like a big problem comes up, which is natural, it happens all the time, but it's the farmer's mindset that we'll figure it out. Or when you've got such a big belief in the vision of what you're trying to move towards, like you just trust that you will. Otherwise, it's like a horrible life to live if you have to like worry about everything all the time.
Yeah, we're breaking brand new ground, right?
Yeah.
There's no mindset health.
Yeah.
Exists.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no playbook. So you went through StartMate, and tell us a little bit about that and then your journey to SF.
So something to call out with the StartMate thing before, because I think is relevant to just people's thinking about starting their own company, is that we got 75 grand and we quit our lives. And obviously we're in a privileged position. We were still young. We don't have dependents. We were able to live at home for rent-free for a while. Like acknowledging that, and that's not everybody, but like I do know people that are like have the ability to drop everything and focus on their thing, but there's all this fear of failure. There's all this like, I'm not going to lean in. There's all these things that stop people from starting. And I think a lot of the times those are excuses or fear-based excuses. And 75K was all it took for us. Some people raise 500 grand and still do it part-time because they can't. They're like, you can always go back. Realistically, you can always go back. You can always do whatever. It's always fine from our perspective. So just calling that out. Just start. Just go.
I think there's a big difference between 100% focus on something and 80% focus on something. It's much bigger than 20%. Like it means you're considering other elements whenever you're thinking about something. It means, so for StartMate, for example, we fully dedicated ourselves entirely 100% to it. We had some amazing partner mentors, like Rachel Newman was awesome, especially from a product and growth and accountability perspective. We had these like mentors that we caught up with on a weekly basis. Not only did they hold us accountable, but they helped lift us up and think bigger and bigger. And every one of the, I guess whether it's like StartMate, YC or investors have always helped us do that as well. We just continue to think bigger as well.
Love that. You already had a bit of traction. You got a sniff, and you're like, we're jumping off.
Yep.
Let's go.
Push it, accelerate. Now we got some money, like 75 grand. Like it's, oh my God, that's incredible. So much money. Like we put 5 grand in at the time. So this is insane. Like rich, we can do whatever.
Love it. And then, because not a lot of companies in Australia get into Y Combinator. When you guys got in, that was huge. Tell us, how are you feeling about that, and what did that do for you?
So we applied for YC 3 times before we got in. And after StartMate, we couldn't raise, we were struggling to raise money. We had this gap of time where we were still on that 75 grand for another year. So we applied 3 times for YC. We had this gap between StartMate not being able to raise and still living off this 75 grand for like nearly a year, and obviously revenue from users. But then we had this insight where we brought in IBS as one of these packs based on all this research. Like it's so much evidence supporting gut-directed hypnotherapy as a tool. And it took off. So that was where we had this earned insight where compared to everything else we had done, that felt the most like product market fit. It ended up being 10% of the content, but 40% of the usage. And they were like growing really fast, really cheap to acquire them compared to everything else anyway, not like that cheap. And then so we learned from that and doubled down on that narrative. And so we became, instead of Headspace for hypnosis, we were like, we help people manage chronic health conditions like IBS. And that positioning changed the questions that they asked. Because we had an interview with YC the batch before, and it was all about how you're going to be calm, how you're going to do this, like how do you do that? Where here it was like, oh, how effective is this? What's the research? It completely changed it. And that was the insight of double down on what's working, and then like how you positioned is how people think about you.
So once we got into the program, one of the very first conversations we had was around, we came into Tim Brady, who was one of our main sort of partner people at YC. And we said, hey, look, everything seems to be pointing towards IBS being amazing for us. It seems to be the best. We're thinking about launching it as its own separate digital therapeutic product. And I think he just said, yeah, okay, do it. Like for him, he was just like, oh yeah, trust that, like follow it. You're so early that you want to be making these decisions so easily. Versus it seems like a lot of people get stuck into here's what we are as a company and then struggle to move between things or pivot or change. But we had an earned insight that gave us a different view on the role that we could play in the world. And we just had to be strong enough or brave enough to be able to make that decision. We ended up killing the whole revenue, for example, for everything else before and only focused this on our new product that we launched called Nerva. But yeah, the cohort was amazing. Everyone's amazingly smart people that are working on big problems that are trying to change the world. And that type of like ambitious mindset, we are around people like that, alongside having mentorship from some of the best people in the world at the same time. It makes you think differently, and it makes you think that you can swing big and have a go for it, which is our mindset we've held still.
on the moment we heard, though, we were in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
We did an in-person meeting. We were like super, like already been rejected once. We bought like a bottle of tequila and a bottle of champagne, like depending on what the answer is. And then it was like 6 o'clock, I remember, and we were sitting in our room, and you get an email when you get rejected and you get a phone call when you get in. And we got it, the phone started ringing, and we started freaking out. And we like put the phone on speaker, and then we just answered, and it was Tim Brady, our partner, who was in the interview with us. He's like, guys, I'm excited like to invite you to join Y Combinator. And honestly, it was like, I want to go back to that. It's pure joy and excitement and like optimism. And it was just something we've worked towards and had so much belief and hope in. And so then I think we drank both, like the champagne and tequila.
Just standing out in the sun, calling everyone.
There was other, so we were in like a hacker house. There was all these other founders there as well. They're like, we excited too. We called our family, called our advisors, called all these people to like celebrate. And it was such a vibe. It was so exciting.
And like, what a surreal moment where you fabricated this fake startup environment. Now you're like, oh shit, we're in the NBA.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Exactly. YC is like harder to get into than Harvard, and because it's amazing. It's the best companies with the best partners to helping to build the next generation of Airbnbs.
And it's, I think, having a mutual friend, Nick Scully, I think he was in your cohort, having met a lot of Y Combinator founders, like, they're kind of crazy in a way, right? You have to be, like, it's not the same as a normal academic institution, right? It's people who are thinking differently and are willing to just be all in on that.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. What else did being in San Francisco, what did you learn over there? What are some of the key things that you're like, oh shit, now we need to adapt the way that we think about things?
I think it really reiterated the point of focus and the sort of idea on who you surround yourself with as well. Like when we were in YC, we were over there for 4 months, and obviously we didn't really know anyone. We were in Mountain View, so a very boring area where you haven't got much to do apart from focus on why you're there. And so we had a little house that we worked in, the same place we slept in, and we were pretty much entirely focused on us as a company as well as hanging out with the other batchmates. And I think hanging out with other batchmates gave you new perspective on ideas. Everyone was interested and ambitious in the same type of way. So like you didn't find anyone bringing you down or making you feel like you can't talk about certain things. It was always like, we're here for each other, we're growing together, and plus just wanted to have a crack at changing the world.
Something else that I remember, and I think it happened actually in SF, but before that, was around like when we went through for the StartMate program, it came through, which is you need to pitch like 150% bigger in America. In Australia, and and there's a good thread around this on Twitter from Andrew Chen, but specifically the Bay Area, but compare that to Australia, it's much more like down to earth. Like it's still VC, so you still want to pitch like the vision and things like that. But the pitch was like everyone in America and in the Bay Area specifically are pitching massive visions and super confident, and they believe in themselves 100%. And if you just come in as a normal Australian who's like afraid of tall poppy syndrome and is like pitching reality in the future, you're going to be viewed against them, and you're going to be cut down, and they're going to think this is not big enough to be a venture scale exit. This is not exciting enough. This is not visionary enough. And I think that idea of you need to pitch 150% of your vision is transferred to us now, like what we're trying to build and how do we communicate it? What does it look like? The vision of like when you go to your doctor and you're in 10 years, you're going to be just as likely to be prescribed like a digital therapy, like as you would be a pharmaceutical. Like that's a massive, like difficult and challenging vision, but it's inspiring. And it might be easier to say, oh, we just want to create a headspace for this, but that's boring and that's not inspiring and that doesn't get investors excited.
100%. And if you trick yourself into believing it's true, if you don't think it's possible, it's not possible.
Yeah.
It also pulls everyone else in as well. Employees, you're trying to talk to employees or try to get people motivated about their day, connect them to that vision. If you want to talk to customers and get them to feel more confident and excited about working and creating this vision in the world with you, that's something we're focusing on now. Is like when we talk to employees or investors, we default to that big vision, that changing the world type aspect. But as soon as we go to the customers, we flip back into, oh, we're solving this pain point problem for you. But one of our focuses now is really just embracing the vision that we want to create in the world and enabling the customers to come on the journey with us.
Love that. And I guess today you're running a business. How many people are in the business today?
40.
40. And you're hiring at the moment. You're still growing.
Yep.
Amazing. 40 people from two guys in a basement / I'm not sure it was a basement.
It was literally a basement.
It was a basement.
Yeah.
It was a basement with a ping
We
pong
used
table.
the ping-pong table was the table.
Oh, God.
It was only half a ping pong
We
table.
halved it to make a table, and then we had the laptop on that.
That's awesome. How do you work through problems today? So let's just say new problems arise. How do you guys come together? Let's just say a growth problem, marketing problems. How do you work through that?
Something we had easier when we were like smaller is we used to live together and we used to walk 40 minutes each way to work together, and you just have this like space for like problem solving through just like we're chatting all the time, and we're in these spaces where it's more like casual. That makes it easier for us to brainstorm and just like solve problems through discussion and ideation and like creative sessions and things like that. Now, because we don't live together and we're not as walking together and things like that, we have to try to replicate that through process. So we have a weekly one-on-one with each other where we discuss status updates. What are we avoiding? What are the biggest problems in the company right now? We recently tried to bring in walk and talks, bring some of that horizontal brainstorm chatting while walking, while doing something else. Like, how do we bring all of that? And then how do we bring in the other people who are probably way smarter than us in our team at a lot of things? And how do we help them help us make better decisions? And then how do we help them make better decisions as well?
We, specifically when Alex and I, we've also, less so recently, we haven't played as many games, but we'd play like Rocket League, which is a game, and we'd be talking strategy while playing this game online together at night. And that was also just very effective, but also fun. So I think something Alex and I have always done has been, Alex had 4 months of an accounting degree. I was still in university. He only slightly, but I've never worked at any type of company before. So literally every single problem has been, like apart from Woolworths and stuff, but every single problem is new generally. So if you're thinking about like how to solve a people problem, or what does a one-on-one structure look like, or how does team processes work, how do you prioritize something, how do you build a product, everything is new. And so we've been forced to build a habit around, one, consuming content online that will help us move in that direction, and then working with people that are way better than us in that area, and then actually creating the outcome with them, but also learning from them. So some of that means like now it's more often internally than it used to be. But when it was just us, we'd reach out to founders all the time. We get intros from our investors, for example, to other people to speak to and ask for sort of advice and learning. And
content.
The YC content is another good example, though, is with both StartMate and YC, we have specifically StartMate as well, people from the cohort that we still regularly call up and ask them for advice. And when we were doing our term sheet for our Series A, we had one of our founder friends who was sitting there with us and helping us understand it and deciding what should we do with it, that sort of thing. So there's still that really close-knit community.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think one thing that I've observed with the two of you is that you're very good at you're very analytical, and you are like very pragmatic about the way you approach the problems. I'm not sure if that's just a trait of like gaming and competitiveness with two brothers, but I've seen like in the growth side and also product side, you're very like, how do we solve the problem? Very focused.
We're having to build the other muscle now more though. We've always been very metrics driven in how we approach pretty much everything. Even building products, we have a top tier analytics set up in terms of amplitude and how we did graphs, even when it was just us two. And just because we thought we had to do that to be able to make the right decisions. Same thing for marketing. But now one of the things we're realizing is there's probably a lot more room for us to be excellent and exceptional outside of metrics in ways that like are much harder to measure. So when we run into problems that you can't really figure out through something like metrics or like talking to users, either one of those two, then I think that's where we're focusing on now, of getting really good at.
Sometimes you just have to take
yourself.
a bet,
Yeah.
And that's hard in say brand marketing where people are willing to do that. Like it's so hard for us where we're so used to like performance marketing and having those things, and like you're like, yeah, we're gonna spend all this money and like maybe something will happen. Like that's feels so hard, but that's what you have to do. And we do it in other ways, like. But then you just have such a, us deciding to focus on Nerva, like that was a bet. Like that's a huge bet. We pivoted the company around that. But it felt right because it was like, there's all this data to show that it's good. Like you can't have proof of that, but there was enough evidence ahead of time that we could do that. Sometimes here you just have to have a gut feeling and do it.
Trust your gut.
Exactly.
Love it. Very on brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would be your final advice to a non-technical, never started a startup, but is super passionate about something, they want to solve this problem? Going back to the beginning, what are your key pieces of advice?
Just start now. Like the countless times that people have come to me with their cool startup ideas and I give them advice and then I never hear from them again. Like just build something, whether it's, we don't know, there's so much cool stuff with AI and no code things and learning to code still. There's no excuse. Like all the things around, I better do this first and then I'll do this. And then it's just like often just a lie to yourself. Like the biggest piece for me would be like ship something as soon as you possibly can.
I think that's the best one. I think the other one I would say is just pick a problem or a product, like either one, that is just exciting to you. Because I think if you can get that excitement and energy around some type of vision of the world that you want to create, then you'll figure it out how to do that, and you'll go through some of the teeth pulling stuff of learning a completely new skill or the random amount of problems that you'll run into. If you just think it's cool and exciting what you're trying to create, or you're very connected to it from a mission perspective, I think it can be any of those directions. But pick something you're excited about and then just start.
Watch all the YC content.
That was only one piece of advice. Can't just keep chucking them in there.
I think that those three combined are excellent. Build something, have something that you're excited about, and watch YC content. On that note, thank you so much, Alex and Chris. Really appreciate it.
No
Cheers,
worries.
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hey there, before you take off, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would love it if you could 1, hit that subscribe button, 2, rate and review the podcast, and 3, share it with someone who you think could get a lot of value from. Thank you so much again for listening, and have a great day.